has launched an ambitious national campaign, the Beloved Community Talks. Let's bridge the racial divide across urban, suburban, and rural America.
Before you can have an open and honest conversation about such a strong and hard topic such as race, you have to come in open-minded and check the privilege that you hold at the door and be willing to open up and learn.
I think the way you look at it, though, and there are some people you're never going to get through to. There's some people that are hate mongers. Well, they break the law, they pay the price, okay? But let me also say that, the bottom line on this issue is that when we approach people who have a completely different position, and I have some that I have to work with that just completely disagree with me. I have two choices. I can either lose my temper and get into it with them, or I can be patient. And the easiest way to disarm somebody who's angry at you is not to return anger with anger.
We spend too much time talking about each other and talking at each other, and not enough time talking with each other.
I've been in Memphis all my life. I have never walked in the doors of the Martin Luther King Museum there, but one day I went in, and I remember walking through the museum, and there was a display of a Klansman with a robe and everything like that, in a glass in case, and I felt probably the most sick and embarrassed feeling in my life.
He gave me his robe and hood. This is the robe of the Imperial Wizard right here. Okay? And, of course, the hood. This means he no longer believes in what this stands for. In fact, he has spoken out against it and has apologized. Upon occasion, he will go on lecture tours with me and speak out against the Klan. And it's all because of a conversation like we're having now.
I mean, we talk about where the problems are, but I think we like fussing about them more. I think we like complaining about them more instead of getting on the ball and getting engaged and using our sphere of influence. It doesn't matter how young you are or how old you are, you have the ability to influence things in another direction. And we can't just keep this divisiveness going.
You're not going to solve anything without digging in and forget all the politics.
The Beloved Community Talks is a great opportunity to get in the discussion on race relations.
Beloved Community Talks.
So good evening, everybody, and I want to welcome you again to our virtual Beloved Community Talks. We are glad you have joined us tonight. We hope that you will truly be inspired. We know that you will tonight, because this is a special night. Invite other people to join in this conversation, because you're into something. You're gonna get something tonight, and our guest is gonna help to unlock us. We're continuing our series, Building the Beloved Community During Crises. And as you know, the last several weeks, we've covered a bevy of topics. The first couple of weeks, we looked at how do you manage fear and anxiety during this crisis. And last week, we had Marianne Williamson, challenging us to embrace other-centeredness while not denying the self-care and the self-love that we so desperately need. And tonight we're going to go to higher heights, because in order for us to really manage this time and emerge from this time in a resilient fashion, we're going to have to really delve in deep to some things. And so tonight we're talking about manifesting courage and resilience. But before we go there, and we are going there tonight, because our guest is one that goes straight there. She's like me. She's a straight shooter. I want to welcome my co-host who has joined me on this journey for the past several weeks, Sam Collier, inspirational speaker. He's a powerful young man, has his own podcast entitled The Greatest Story that he created, he founded, and he hosts. So Sam, what's up with you tonight? How are you holding up? And I know we shouldn't do this tonight, but I'm just going to say, in all seriousness, I'm going to express my condolences to you tonight, as I did earlier, on the loss of your aunt and uncle as a result of COVID.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's such an honor to be here. This is truly a historic moment. Anytime you have Dr. Brene Brown and Dr. Bernice King on a call, I mean, it's historic. And so I know so many people are excited and they are elated to be with us. And I appreciate the condolences. As we were talking a little bit offline, these are unprecedented times. This is unexpected. It's a constant state, all of us, of grieving in some type of way. And so, but every day you have to wake up and make a decision to live and to believe and to keep hope. And so that's why I'm here today. And I'm excited to be with you guys.
And, we want you to just enjoy yourself tonight. Relax. This is time to really relax. Open your ears, open your heart, open your mind tonight. It's going to be heavy in a light way. Now that's an oxymoron, but it's going to be heavy in a light way, because these are serious times. But as we get through these serious times, we have to do it in a way that it doesn't weigh too heavily on us, that we cannot push through and do what's necessary. We are living in very uncertain times. It's as Sam said, it's unprecedented. The level of uncertainty that we are all facing jointly. Tonight, as I said, we're going to be delving into the topic of manifesting courage and resilience. And we have a special guest. Many of you know her, Dr. Brene Brown. She's a professor at the University of Houston, does a lot of research on human behavior and emotion. She has had a Netflix special called A Call to Courage, and podcast Unlocking Us. If ever there was a time that we've been unlocked, this pandemic, Dr. Brown, has really been unlocking a lot of emotions in so many of us. We're coming across things that perhaps we've never felt before, because it's so uncertain. And so welcome tonight to our conversation, and thank you for joining us. I want to start with this because you deal a lot with the word vulnerability. And these are very vulnerable times, as you well know. And you state that the definition is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. And that really a person, cannot really act in courage if there's no vulnerability. You can't find courage without vulnerability. It's kind of like Siamese twins. And for all of us, these are uncertain times. It's a real challenge for most of us right now. And we have millions of people right now just trying to figure out how they're going to make it economically. They are facing unemployment. And so there's this financial uncertainty. And then all this uncertainty around the coronavirus, how do you really get it? Where did it really come from? As we go out, am I going to be subjected to someone who may pass it on to me? And so how do we get through this moment that is introducing us, as we talked earlier, to this new normal? What does it even look like? And so my question tonight is, we need your help. I mean, isn't that something in this pandemic to know that you're needed? We need your help. So tell us some practical ways that we can face this monumental uncertainty. How do we show up right now? And what does resilience look like in the face of this unknown, these uncertainties?
So I'm always so compelled by you when you're speaking. So when you said, relax, listen, take it easy, I'm like, okay, I'm with you. I'm like, oh man, dang it, I got to talk. I was lulled into relaxing and watching. Completely honored to be with you, Dr. King, to be with you again, Sam. I met y'all in January and it was an amazing experience. I'm glad to be back. we are in the deepest collective vulnerability that I think we can imagine. And the only comparison I have to draw on is I've been studying courage, vulnerability, shame, empathy, the emotions and experiences that make us human for over 20 years. And weirdly enough, I started my research into these topics 6 months before 9/11.
Wow. Wow.
And so I've been on the ground watching people and talking to people and researching people. And I have watched how fear has changed us. I have watched how that kind of intensive uncertainty and vulnerability has changed us. And we find ourselves again in this moment of inextricable connection. We can forget that we're connected to each other, but to me, faith and spirituality is about the understanding that we're connected to each other by something bigger than us. Right now, we are inextricably connected to each other and in deep vulnerability. And so what that means really when you're in this level of vulnerability is you only really have a couple of choices. One is acknowledge the vulnerability, acknowledge the emotion, acknowledge the hard toughness of it, or by default, the fear will make us blaming, angry, enraged, and scared. And so one of the things I keep telling myself all the time, because I feel as vulnerable as everyone, is I don't have to be scary when I'm scared. I don't have to be scary when I'm scared, because a lot of us get scary because we look for people to blame. We look for a way to discharge hurt. It's easier to cause pain than be in pain. And so vulnerability is a hard place, but as you mentioned, it's also the birthplace of love, of trust, of courage. I mean, one of the things I ask people, it was funny because I've had to do a lot of explaining in my career about vulnerability as courage, because I'm a 5th generation Texan and I was raised to believe that vulnerability is weakness.
Right.
And I was at Fort Bragg standing in front of troops talking to them about my research, and I asked a simple question. I said, vulnerability is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Give me one example of courage. One example of courage that did not require uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. And there was just silence until one guy stood up and said, ma'am, 3 tours. There is no courage without vulnerability. A week later, I'm with the Seattle Seahawks and I'm working with the team and Coach Carroll. And I said, guys, give me an example. Cause they're like, we're NFL players. We're not going to be vulnerable. And I said, give me a single example of courage on the field or off the field that didn't require uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Of course, they had to huddle up for a minute, but they got back and they said, there is no courage without vulnerability. So we have to choose consciously right now courage, kindness, love. And I don't know about y'all. I make up you may be better at it, Dr. King, than I am. Sam, I don't know you, but I just make up that maybe y'all are better at it. But when I'm afraid and scared and uncertain, I can be really crappy to other people.
Yes. Yes.
And I gotta say to myself, these are the things I have to say to myself every morning. I don't have to be scary if I'm scared. I can be scared without being scary to other people. Number 2, which is so hard for me. And number 2 is I was raised in a tough household where we were taught that you're either brave or you're afraid. Wow. And what I have learned 400,000 pieces of data and 20 years later, that was wrong, that most of us are brave and afraid at the exact same moment all day long. And that I can be courageous and fearful at the same time, and I can choose to show up in a brave way, even though I'm afraid. And I think that's what we need right now. We need to acknowledge the fear and show up in a brave way.
Wow. I just first, I'm speechless. I think I'm like you, Dr. Brown, when Dr. King was talking, I'm just listening, I'm taking it in, I'm remembering my own life. I just want to take a quick moment and address some of the viewers. This is our biggest beloved community talk since we've started. I just want to say that live. It is across so many different Facebook pages. People are so excited to spend some time. And I just want to remind the people tuning in now, share this feed. I just want to pause because there's so much gold happening here. Dr. Bernice King, Dr. Brene Brown in one space. Share this feed. Give us some hearts right now and let people know that this is a historic moment. And if they need some answers in this time, we believe that it's happening. Dr. Brown, I feel like I need permission to call you Bishop, because so many of my Christian friends, when they heard that you were here, they said, that's my pastor, that's my bishop. I said, wait a minute, you go to church? I mean, wait, and they said, that's my bishop. And so if I'm addressing you, one of the things as you talk about this courage and being, brave, courageous, also afraid at the same time, one of the things that we think about is parents, but then also students during this time. This is a season where graduations aren't normal anymore. People and students are missing out on prom for the first time. Moments that they've waited for their entire lives. Now, parents have to deal, but how do we help? And you said this offline, that this is somewhat of a traumatic time. How do we help students and kids? How do parents help their kids make it through these hard moments of missing graduation and prom? And there's nothing they can do. It's helpless in a sense.
It's okay. I have so many thoughts on this because, I mean, as a mom, I've got an 8th grader who was working on a play for the last 6 months. It's not happening. I have a junior in college. Her boyfriend is a senior. I'm doing the commencement address for the University of Texas at Austin, which was like one of my career highlights too. And so here's what I would say about that. Y'all are going to hate, parents are going to hate this advice. Because it's not advice, because I'm trying to live by it too. I'm a solid C+ on it. It's not what you know about parenting right now. Right now, be the adult you want your kid to grow up to be.
Wow.
Be the parent. And so one of the things that's okay that parents don't understand is it's okay to sit down with their kids and say, I'm uncertain too. I'm disappointed too. And, we don't have to. The thing that gets very dangerous right now is, I call it comparative suffering. We rank order pain. I see parents looking at kids and going, you're upset because there's no play. There are people dying. That's a loss for our kids.
Yes.
And I don't have more empathy for the person who is facing death and loss because I'm not sharing it with the child who's missing the play. Empathy is not finite. It's not pizza. I don't have less if I give you some. The more I give, the more I have. And so we have to remember with our kids, and this is, I think, super important. Perspective is a function of experience. And so our kids' their worlds are smaller than ours. They don't have the same experience. And so honor the loss, acknowledge the loss. It's okay to model. It's okay to tell your kids, here's the thing. We're going to work to keep you safe, but we're also uncertain. We're also fearful right now. I could make up something about how this is going to end, but I don't know, because then what we do is teach our children the lesson that uncertainty doesn't mean unsafe.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does. And what you're sharing too is that be vulnerable.
Yes. Be vulnerable.
Because a lot of times parents feel like they have to be this hero for their kids. They have to not show their scars, their weak moments, their emotions. And so it's joining in that journey with them and letting them see that, and then modeling as an adult how you move through it, how you can find a new normal or a new experience out of what you may have missed. and how you can maybe experience it another way.
Yeah, I thought, I read this thing about, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, 12 years ago from Pema Chodron, an American Buddhist nun. And she said, compassion is not a relationship between the wounded and the healed. Compassion is a relationship between equals. It's knowing your darkness well enough that you can sit in the dark with others. So when my kids are in pain and they're in the dark, I have to resist my reflex to flip on all the lights and fix it, but teach them how to sit with them in the dark and teach them that they've got the skills to sit in the dark.
Wow.
And that's hard. That's harder than fixing.
Wow. I think one of the things I'm thinking about, just even as you're saying that, is this idea of having even compassion for first responders that are on the line. And if we take a pivot really quick, as you talk about this idea of, one, being compassionate for those that are putting their lives on the line, but I want to go back to something you said about being brave and afraid at the same time, and how that's what we need in this season. Someone asked a question even recently as we're talking, how do you do that? And I know there are first responders, maybe even at the hospital right now, that one need compassion, but then also are wondering how can I be brave and afraid? Because there are some, can we just be honest? There are some losing their minds on their breaks because they're seeing so much death. So how can they show up like that?
I think first of all, these are the heroes.
Yeah.
Right. These are the heroes during this crisis, folks showing up, delivering food for people who can't get out of their house, people working food banks, nurses, physicians, janitors, people delivering. I mean, these are the heroes. And if we pretend that they're different than us, they're not afraid, they're made of something different, we don't give them the empathy and compassion and love, they're just as scared as we are, but they're showing up to do the next right thing because that's what they're called to do. And so I would say a couple of things. Running on complete empty. You cannot draw water from an empty well. Running on complete empty is not sustainable for any of these folks. At some point, we're going to have a second guard come in because what we're asking for them is beyond human scale. Yeah. And so to me, being brave and afraid at the same time is me saying, I'll give a personal example that involves y'all. When you asked me to speak on Martin Luther King Jr. Day at Ebenezer, I was telling them when we were in the green room that by the time I sat down, my hand was bleeding after speaking because I was clutched so hard like this the whole time. And I pushed my ring into my finger and it made a cut. And I kept saying, I can't do this. I can't do this. It's too important. I can't do this. And then when the first moment I said, you can be afraid and do it anyway. You can be afraid and do it anyway. I just took a breath and said, that's okay. And when I got up there to speak, my voice shook a little bit. But I was feeling vulnerable and afraid, but trying to choose courage. Mm-hmm. And if we're only brave, look, if you only make courageous choices when you're feeling brave, the choices are probably not that courageous. It's when we're vulnerable and we say, I see you, fear. I get you. I hear you. I understand how you're trying to protect me. I'm going to do this anyway.
So can I just interject something that as we're talking tonight, I'm always thinking about my father and perhaps many people talk about what would he be saying during this time. I mean, he has so many powerful words, but there's something that he said tying into your understanding of courage. He said that courage is the inner resolution to go forward, and he contrasted that with the word go forward despite the obstacles, to go forward despite the obstacles. So the obstacles, the uncertainty right now is a big obstacle for all of us. And it expresses itself in different ways. But then he said, cowardice is submissiveness submissive surrender to circumstances. And right now, people are fighting between the two. There's, fighting between just submitting it. Nothing I can do about this. I'm powerless. I'm helpless. And yet I can't stay in this place of powerlessness where it seems like somebody else is just in charge of my destiny and what I can do from day to day. But courage, as we all know during this time, we've seen it. It breeds creativity. This is my father talking now. People coming up with all kind of innovative things right now that they would not maybe perhaps come up with, but for this time of uncertainty and sheltering in place. He went on to say, cowardice represses fear and is mastered by it. And the question, he said, cowardice asked the question, is it safe? Expediency asked the question, is it politic? Vanity asked the question, is it popular? But then conscience comes along and asks the question, is it right?
Oh,
And he
God.
said that there comes a time when we must take a position. We must stand firm in a place. And I'm ad-libbing a little bit. That is neither safe nor politic nor popular, but you must take it because it's right. Right now, people are trying to figure out, how do we restart this economy, so to speak? How do we get back to work? And I know we've been dealing with issues down here in Georgia with being one of the states to put some of the businesses back to work starting this Friday. And there's been an uproar about that. People have different opinions about that. The question is, what does courage look like and resilience look like when you have to go against the grain to ensure just and humane treatment of others? Especially because this is a question that somebody has asked, even, especially when you're dealing with the disenfranchised and the Black and brown communities, as we know, that are disproportionately impacted and affected. How do people show up right now and become courageous neighbors, and not necessarily showing up with protests in the streets, because that's even risky, brave and safe, brave and fearful, is it brave to go out now in that circumstance? Are you being cowardice if you don't? How do you balance all that and yet still emerge as a courageous person in this hour to show up for the least of these, so to speak?
One of the things I keep hearing over and over is, when it comes to folks on the margin, disenfranchised populations, underserved, the virus doesn't discriminate. And the virus doesn't discriminate, but Americans do.
Yeah.
And so what we're not seeing the result of a virus that discriminates. We're seeing the results of a country that does.
Yes.
And so there's a really big difference there. And to me, I don't know, I don't have the answer to your question. I know for me and my work and what I have found is that doing right by your life and the lives of the people you love, whether it's popular or not popular right now, is the only thing that we have. The only thing that we have is to make decisions that honor the lives that we honor and to continue to fight for justice. That's it. That's all we can do right now. And we don't have ways to gather those that we traditionally gather, but we have forums like this. You're doing it right now. But we need to make, there's a couple of things that I think are really important as we think about this experience as collective trauma. And one of them is, be wary of leadership who gives you something or someone to blame for your loss and your pain. because a lot of times there will be a time for accountability, and I'm really all for accountability. But there is a real leadership crisis right now where we take angry, scared people and say, oh, let's give this virus an ethnicity. Let's talk about communities who are hard hit, that being their fault. Let's talk about, and as soon as you have leaders, I mean, here's the thing. You want to run the world, you only need two things. Keep people afraid and give them someone to blame for their fear.
Wow.
That's it. And so
wow.
I think one of the ways that we fight for love and what we believe in right now is refuse to repeat and participate in that rhetoric. And to understand, again, people and communities that are hardest hit right now have nothing to do with the virus and everything to do with systemic racism, poverty, voter fraud. There are real issues that people are dying because of them right now. And so
how do people deal with the frustration around the disparities? What do they do with that?
I don't know. I've been so hateful lately, and that is not the way to go. Like, I'm just being really human right now.
That's not the way.
Like, I've seen some stuff on TV. I had to get off. I had to get off TV. And then I turned off the TV and got on social media. And my husband's like, no.
That's even worse.
We're not transitioning from TV to social media. No. I don't have the answer, and I would just be BSing you if I had one. I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I can appreciate that.
I don't know what to do with the frustration. I've tried to pray it out. I've tried to walk 10 miles. The only thing I can do really is acknowledge it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think the important thing is what you started out with, which was the whole vulnerability piece.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the time to sit with the different emotions that we are experiencing and the responses that we're having as a result of what we're hearing, what we've been brought into, but not letting it paralyze us and not letting it cripple us, and having the courage to get up every day with a new hope and a new determination and a new belief that, and this sounds cliche, but I just have to say it as we close. This too shall pass.
I believe that.
We may not determine or dictate or be able to manipulate the timetable for it. But you have an advocate that's working on your behalf, a constant companion of this universe. Some of us call it God. Many people call it by different names. But we've been brought into this, and we will be brought through this and out of this. And the whole purpose is that what you're talking about, let's learn to lead from a vulnerable place, because we can't do it in fear anymore. Because a lot of times people do it in fear because they're afraid to be vulnerable as leaders. And I think that's what's needed now, some vulnerable leaders who are not even afraid to say, I don't know what I'm doing. We don't know what we're doing, but guess what? We're determined to look at the data. We're determined to find the answer, to work together collectively, because you may have an answer that I don't have, and it's okay that I don't have all the answers as the leader.
I mean, and
I made a mistake.
And
I made a mistake because none of us have been here before. So
I respect that. Wouldn't you respect that if you saw that?
Yes.
100%.
Yes. As long as they don't remain in cowardice, as long as they're acting in courage. Yes.
Well, look, I again always hate to cut in at the end. I always hate
You're cutting us off when it gets really good.
I know. I hate it, but they that's my job. They tell me, as we close, Dr. Brown, if you were to leave this live with one sentence, one thought as we exit, what would it be?
I'll share my private prayer with you that I've prayed every morning since we've gone into this. My private prayer is, God, give me the strength and courage to contribute more than I criticize.
Wow. Listen,
Wow.
we want to thank you.
That's a big prayer for me, y'all. I got to put that
Yes.
in perspective. That's a big one because I have felt crazy lately.
Woo. Well, you're simply incredible. If we haven't said it enough, we love you. King Center loves you. I believe, I can't speak for all of the Black community, but I think a large part of the Black community loves you. Obviously, the Christian community, and your sacrifice and for everything that you've done. I just want to say publicly, thank you for what you're changing lives. Your life, you're writing history with your life. And we're just so grateful for you. Listen, guys, if you want to know more about the incredible Dr. Brene Brown, I want you to hit her up on Facebook. It's Brene Brown across every single platform, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Also, listen to her podcast, Unlocking Us. And also, if you'd like to keep these conversations going, the King Center, along with our partners at Civic Dinners, has made it possible for us all to connect in meaningful ways by hosting your own virtual Beloved Community Talks dinner conversation. Visit us on the website at belovedcommunitytalks.org for a step-by-step guide for registering and hosting a virtual dinner. Dr. King, I leave it with you.
Yeah, and I want to thank you, Sam, for joining me on this journey, as I said earlier, helping me to co-host. And Dr. Brown, it always takes someone to go out ahead of the crowd. And your example and commitment to helping us to not be ashamed to operate out of vulnerability is so critical and timely, in fact. I mean, and so I want to thank you because it is a catalyst for change. On tonight, I want to thank you for just sharing your heart, sharing your thoughts, sharing your mind. Thank you for the work that you're doing every day, what you're sharing from your soul, which is so important. And to all of those who have joined us, know that as we said, we're in this in different ways, but we're in it together. And we're going to continue to help all of us along this journey as we continue to try to build the beloved community during this crisis and even beyond. And I want to leave you with something as we were beginning this conversation about manifesting courage and resilience. As Dr. Brown has shared her prayer, one of the prayers that so many of us have heard through the generations over and over again. And it's the best time for us to be reminded of it. And I'm just going to challenge you that every day you begin to pray that, because this prayer now has real meaning. And it's, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change and the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's what's going to save us. That's what's going to keep our hope alive and keep our momentum and cause us to be resilient. So thank you for tuning in tonight. And next week, please join us. We're going to be talking about the power. I think it's the power of we. This is not the season for me. This is the season of we, the collective power of we, and we'll be joined by none other than Deepak Chopra. So please get the word out. Come back to our virtual Beloved Community Talks as we continue on this building the beloved community during crises. Have a wonderful night. And as I said last time, be safe, be wise in this time, and God bless you.